Please welcome producer Ron Bergman, writer, director Rian Johnson, and Don Johnson. How you doing?
I thought I was moving here.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan, there's one question I'm dying to ask you, and it's such a poignant scene. Harlan's final night. There's so many different tones to that scene. It's funny, is scary, is sad. There's so many details. Can you tell us about the construction of that scene?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having us, and thank you guys for being here for that warm reception. And we do have, before I answer your question, we do have one order of business to take care of. We have to sing something to my brother,
Happy
Mr. Don
birthday.
Johnson. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Don Johnson. Happy birthday to you.
Wait till I tell my kids I came up here to have a whole room full of people sing. That is so sweet. Thank you very much. Totally unexpected.
Yes.
Now, answer the man's question. Get me off the hot seat.
Yeah, I mean, that was... So that scene lets me talk about Christopher Plummer and Ana de Armas, who both, I mean, obviously Christopher Plummer is a legend and such an extraordinary actor and man. Ana, I just can't say enough about Ana de Armas, who played Marta. She was just, she was extraordinary. And to step into the middle of a cast that is, first of all, just in terms of like there's just, the name level of the cast, the talent level of the cast, and the fact that everybody is kind of giving as big a performance as they are. For her to step as confidently as she did into the middle of that as a relative newcomer and carry the movie as confidently as she did, I just think she's amazing. And that scene is a great example in the middle of what has been a very arch film. That scene right in the middle of it needs to emotionally land, otherwise the entire film doesn't work. And so I think it's a testament to those two actors that they,
But also to your writing and directing, there is such an incredibly tricky scene with all the details happening. And as I said, the tone, that it goes from sad to scary to macabre.
Well, I remember talking, when we first started talking about it, it was very important. I think a lot of people's first reference for films like this is Clue, the film fairly recently, which I adore Clue, but it's very much a comedy. It's a parody of murder mysteries. And it was important to me that this was going to be very funny and very fun and had kind of a self-aware spirit, but was not a parody of murder mysteries. It was a murder mystery that was about something that was also very fun.
It's actually, if I can sing his praises a little bit, you're right about that scene. If that scene doesn't work, we've got a big problem. And the fact that those two actors and Rian constructed it, and it's detail work. It's Sistine Chapel kind of work, as an actor and a director and stuff like that. But basically, what is so extraordinary about the film, and what I couldn't articulate it when I first read it, but I knew I was reading something special, is that it's a Hitchcockian thriller bookended by a whodunit. And that's that's how he decides, I'll just contemporize this whodunit by putting a little Hitchcock thriller in the middle of it.
And one of the delicious things about watching the film, Don, is that we've never seen you like this. You're so against type. I mean, you're the kept man.
I loved it. In fact, I'm open for offers. That little boozy thing going around, I could do that.
Yeah, what was it like? I mean, we've never seen you so smarmy.
I just never had the opportunity to let my real smarm out.
What was it like when you first I think you mentioned it. I mean, but what was it like when you first read the script? And
I couldn't believe my good fortune that in my hands was a script that was so inspiring and so well thought out and well constructed that I immediately read it again. That never happens. Usually if I can get through a script all the way through one, that's a miracle. If I sit and read one again, I think it's happened twice in my career, and then I was just trying to figure out, okay, how do I keep from losing this job?
Ron, what an incredible cast. It's the amazing ensemble. How difficult was it to assemble this ensemble?
I mean, Ryan, I just tell you, Ryan started writing the script last January, and we wrapped the movie by Christmas. So we had a script that we felt comfortable going to cast by early September. A week later, we had Daniel, and 6 weeks later, we started shooting. So I think the fact that we didn't have a lot of time helped us actually cast everybody.
That's like so fast in our business. I mean, that's just blindingly fast.
The fact that you can go to cast and say, we're going to start shooting in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, come now to Boston as opposed to in 6 months from now, I think made it really easier.
Yeah, usually I need 2 weeks to cry.
Ryan, you were going to say something?
No, it's exactly that. If it's like, oh, we're shooting sometime next year, I think the agents and everyone, you're just keeping your options open for if something else can. But if you can say, right now we're shooting Boston, get your butt down here, then that helps.
When I met you outside, I told you I've been a big fan. Brick and Looper, one of my favorite movies, and you've always been subverting genres. Can you talk about that and the fact that you used this genre to look at contemporary America?
Yeah, I mean, I love working in genre. I love it gives you a shared grammar with the audience. I like having like a game board to play on with the audience. In terms of like subverting genres, I never come at it that way. For me, if I'm doing a genre, it's because I deeply love it, and every decision I make is trying to get the heart of what I deeply love about it up on the screen and give the audience that pure experience of, what I loved about reading Agatha Christie novels when I was 10, or what I loved about watching Death on the Nile with my family when I was a kid. And for me, I'm trying to get at the heart of that. Now, sometimes if it's a genre that's very familiar to audiences, I find it's helpful, because sometimes, even myself as a moviegoer, if it's something I'm very familiar with, when I see it, I can kind of know what box to put it in and kind of not get that original experience from it. So sometimes you have to shake it a little bit, but the intention is always to do that to kind of wake up the audience's senses to it and make them lean in, as opposed to, here's this old thing, let's shake it. No, it's trying to get to what's great about the thing. That's always sort of the intent.
And you mentioned Agatha Christie. Her films dealt with social mores and hierarchy.
Yeah.
And can you tell us about?
Yeah, she was. I mean, it's not like she was an incredibly political writer, but what she always did is wrote to her time, and she was always examining contemporary British society through the lens of the characters that she created, through these kind of caricatures that she would create. And very much, the whodunit is almost a little machine that's almost built to examine class. I mean, you create a little microcosm of a society in the house or the train or wherever the mystery takes place, and you have all your suspects who are kind of a cross-section of that society from the high to the low, and then you have the person at the top of that power structure that's going to get bumped off. And the thing that was interesting to me is when we see whodunits these days, first of all, they're usually period pieces, because they're usually Agatha Christie adaptations, and that means they're also usually set in Britain. And so we can, the class element of it, we're like, oh, those Brits with their upstairs, downstairs, haha. It seemed to me plugging that into America in 2019 could yield some interesting things.
And Don, we care so much about these characters, but they're right on the edge of caricature.
Oh man, that was
Can you tell us about balancing that?
Yeah, that was like, the scene where I'm talking about, I didn't mention him, but I'm obviously talking about the president. That was one of the first big ensemble scenes up, and when we started to put it together, and I'm happy to be working with such a great cast, but this is a specific tone, and I wasn't exactly sure where it was. Brian and I had talked about it, and I was, and I trust my instrument, but the first time through, we're sitting there, and I turned to him and I go, that was really big. I'm way out there on the plank. Oh, he says, perfect. And then when I saw Daniel, 2 days later, I saw Daniel Craig's big speech where he comes in and tells us we're all vultures and beaks wet, at the thing, and he's broad and doing his Shelby Foote impersonation and stuff like that. I went, I'm good. I'm good. If Daniel can do that, they're not even going to see mine.
That's great. Ram, can you tell us about the mansion? Did you guys shoot in an actual house?
Yeah, we scouted and we found the house while Ryan was still writing the script outside Boston, and we shot the majority of the movie in that house. We kind of added another house for the library section, and we built some stuff on the stage, but the majority of the movie was shot in that house.
And then it was the production designer that came up with all those. I mean, like in every turn, there's something creepy to it.
Oh my God.
It was, yeah. So our production designer, David Crank, who is amazing. He's collaborated with Jack Fisk on Paul Thomas Anderson's movies and on Terrence Malick's films. Crank is incredible. He and our set decorator, David Schlesinger. David Schlesinger is the one who found all of that amazing stuff in the house. And it's incredible. We brought all of that in, all those automatons, all the artwork, all those creepy statues, and because the family that lives there are not actual psychopaths. Their house was pretty normal before we showed up. The reference I gave them was one of my favorite films, the 1970s version of Sleuth with Michael Caine and Laurence Olivier, which is it's a brilliant film. It's also set inside a mansion that's owned by an eccentric mystery writer and filled with all his obsessions. So we kind of those of you who know the film Sleuth, Jolly Jack the Sailor is like a drunk sailor statue that figures into it, and we stuck one of those in the foyer of the house as a reference.
And is it me? But as we go up, it keeps getting stranger and stranger.
Just like his head, yeah. And then his little weird study is like the inside of his brain. yeah. It's kind of. That's the fun part of the murder mystery mansion of the mind. Is it really is like the house is. To coin a cliche, the house is like a character, but it really, truly is.
Don, and I mean this is the most flattering thing. No. It's actually about the fact that I have never seen an ensemble that you guys seem to be almost competitive with each other, but in a really good way.
When you work, we've been doing this as long as I have. You learn the actors that have that know what they're doing and those that don't, and so there's an interesting sort of tug of war that goes on. You have to be incredibly selfish with your character, and incredibly giving with your character simultaneously. It's like a zen, and. These actors, all of these actors in this movie, understand that principle. And so when you hit the ball across the net, you can expect some topspin to come on back with it. And we feed off of that. We love that. We live for those moments, especially to have dialogue and a director who's not going to let us go too far out, and who's going to bring us back if we start ad-libbing the stuff that isn't pertinent or that takes us out of the moment. And where it's really evident is in the scenes where we're chasing her out of the house and trying to get her to give the money back and stuff like that. And you can hear all of our dialogue, most of it, I don't know what you did in the editing room, but most of it was clear. And the reason is that listening is the key to acting. listening and responding. And all those actors are incredibly good listeners and competitive.
And were you guys having as much fun as it comes on the screen? I mean, I've seen the film twice, and you guys seem to be having a ball.
Well, we had a blast. You know, we had these monster trailers no further than like right out here to the parking lot. We'd come in the morning, we'd get in makeup, and never see the trailer again because we would all be in the house sitting there telling stories. It was like summer stock theater, telling stories and lies and, you know, reporting in about affairs. I learned stuff that I never knew about myself. And so it was that richness of being in a creative environment with people you love and respect, and with a ringmaster who knew how to tame the lions.
And Brian, curious about the script and writing this. There's so many characters, so many motives, so many twists and turns. Was this like a mathematical challenge for you to put all of this together?
I mean, a little bit, but every script kind of, I write really structurally, so I outline before I sit down to write. The first 80% of the process is outlining for me, which especially with a movie like this is important, because having a roadmap before you get started is essential with something like this. But the other big thing, I mean, especially with a whodunit mystery and something that's very twisty and turny, you know, the best whodunits, they never forget that first and foremost they are stories. They're not puzzles, they're not puzzle boxes, they're not crossword puzzles. The true pleasure of them is not really going to come out of the intricacies of can you figure out this puzzle by the end of it. The true pleasure comes from it comes from in any other story, which is following the characters, being worried about them, having emotional setups and payoffs. And so for me, the real math of it was making sure all that puzzle stuff was laid in there, but first and foremost, making sure that at the end of it, when she's up on that roof and there's that final shot, that's going to be be satisfying for the audience on levels that are beyond just, oh, I figured it out, or I didn't figure it out.
And the decision of making Benoit, Colonel Sanders, and Shelby Foote, you know, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was written in the script that I wrote in the script that he had a Southern accent just to make him a fish out of water in New England, and then Daniel and I just talked through what it should be, and he found the Shelby Foote reference. I'm a big fan of the film Best in Show, of the mock doc about dogs.
Yeah.
And it was funny, but it was Christopher Guest's character in that, Harlan Pepper, has a similar accent. Yeah. He's Jamie Lee Curtis's husband.
Yeah.
And so on set, I don't know if you guys know the movie, when he's driving in the car with his hound dog and he starts listing different types of nuts. He's like, pine nut, macadamia nut, natural pine nut. And I would find myself doing that on set, and until Daniel would shoot me a look. That was yeah, but it was kind of for me it was something that would just make him kind of a fish out of water and give Daniel something to grab onto in terms of the slight buffoonishness that's, I think, essential for any detective in a whodunit thing. If you think about Columbo with his blundering, and Poirot with his kind of weird fussiness, and Miss Marple being like a doddering old lady, there's always some element to the detective that puts the suspects off guard and makes them and the audience not quite take him seriously until it's too late.
Yeah, correct. It creates doubt on the main character if they have imperfections. The inspector. What was it? He brought up Jamie Lee Curtis. You have a wonderful rapport with her on the film. Can you tell us about working with Jamie Lee?
Well, I've known Jamie Lee for since time began, and we were never boyfriend and girlfriend. I can happily report that. But apparently we were married in another lifetime, because when I showed up to play her husband, she started bossing me around, and I started complying immediately. I just want to go back to one thing. Daniel picked some highfalutin author, Shelby Foote, to fashion his Southern accent, and in Django Unchained, I picked Foghorn Leghorn.
Funny. Brian, the Steve Yedling, your cinematographer. Can you tell us about working with him? And I love the low angles and the camera work that you did on the film.
Well, Steve and I have been best friends since we were 17 years old. We met, he was still a senior in high school. I was a freshman at USC, and we met on a student film set. And Steve was basically at 17 running the camera department on the student film set, and I was literally so useless that when they ran out of sandbags, they asked me to sit on the C-stands to hold them down. So Steve took pity on me and showed me how to load a camera, and we've been best friends, and he shot every film I've done, from Brick through Star Wars through this one, and he's an incredibly talented guy, and the lighting in this film, I feel like Steve just kind of hit. I just think it's so beautiful. I think he did such great work. Yeah.
And Don, the costume designer, Jenny Egan, there's such specificity to everybody.
She is somewhat of a. This is my third or fourth time of working with Jenny, and each time I expect her to kind of do a variation on what we did before or something like that, and it's completely new, it's completely fresh, it's all thought out, and the thing is that none of this really works unless you have that guy who is who's orchestrating and coordinating all of these incredibly talented people and setting the stage for these things to happen. I can't say enough about Ram for that. I mean, that's a gift. That's a real gift.
I do have to say I had envy on all the cashmere you were wearing.
This is quite. You take this from the set? Is this from?
This might
take
be.
This from Chris?
I don't know. Let's not look too close.
Ram, one of the other things that I love about this film is the multi-generational aspect of the cast. The fact that I could bring my family and feel that everybody in the family will relate to what's happening on the screen. Was that something?
I thought he was talking about our ages.
I think it was something right away in the script, and that's why we kind of picked up right from the beginning, and we felt that Thanksgiving would be a perfect release date because we felt it is a great movie for the family to go see.
It's great. And were you surprised about the great success of the film so far?
Absolutely.
Oh, goodness. And then, how difficult was it, Rian, to keep the audience to not knowing where you're going with the story?
Well, I mean, part of the setup with it, and Don hit it on the head, was saying it's like a Hitchcock thriller stuck in the middle of a whodunit. Part of the intentional thing with it was to tell the audience very early on, or relatively early on, don't worry about whodunit. Don't worry about figuring that out.
Yeah, the guy kills himself on page 3. And you're going, okay, so this is a whodunit? I know whodunit. The guy that's dead done it.
And then when that Marta scene hits, it's like, okay, so, all right. So it basically saying, maybe there will be a surprise at the end. Maybe there'll be someone else who does, maybe not. That's not the ride we're on here. Here's a person that we care about. They're in this impossible situation. Let's all lean forward in our chairs and see how they can get out of this. And so, in a way, my way of seeing if part of the pleasure is if an audience can get it, great, and you do line all the stuff up, so in the big denouement scene, everything kind of fits. But for me, again, it was more about saying early on, let's not worry about whodunit. Let's go on this ride. And of course, that itself is a trick, because then we're hiding a whodunit beneath that the entire time.
And how challenging was it editing this film?
It snapped together. My editor, Bob Doucet, is fantastic. And movie, more than any of other films, it snapped together pretty quickly. We found the film pretty quick. I mean, there wasn't a lot of big shuffling around or anything. It was really what was on the page is kind of where we ended
So
up.
when you constructed the script, all the flashbacks and
Oh, yeah, that's
they were
all.
already in place.
Oh yeah, that's all written in the script. Yeah.
Okay, and then the last question is about Marta. The fact that she's incapable of telling a lie without throwing up. It is brilliant. And how did that come about?
Yeah, I apologize. That was just a story thing. It's kind of when I realized, okay, in the Hitchcock mode, this is our protagonist. This is the one that we care about. She's in a terrible spot. Her only tool to get out of that spot is by lying. And so it's the Vince Gilligan school of screenwriting. It's let's make life as hard as possible for your characters. Let's take away her ability to lie. And the typical way to do that would be to give her a tell, like she blinks twice or she touches her nose or something. I thought this would be a little more fun. Also, though, it serves a purpose, which is she can't hide it. That's the other nice thing about it. It's a big, splashy way of doing it, so that she can't, or she can barely hide it. And then once I realized the way I could use it at the end with Chris Evans' character, with Ransom, which is a fun moment, but it also has a real purpose, which is if you think about those last 30 minutes, we've just watched our protagonist sit passively and listen to another character explain the entire thing. So I needed a beat at the end where she actively defeats Ransom, where she does something herself, where she's the one who is the one who wins. And the fact that she could do that by puking in his face just made it all the more sweet.
Oh, delicious. Yeah. Well, congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for being here on your birthday.